friends, and welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to share all of my thoughts and feelings on the 6th book in the Outlander series, A Breath of Snow and Ashes. Alright, and if you see me looking down at any point in this video, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I just wanted to be as thorough as possible, and it's been a while since I've read the series, so I wanted to note everything down before I got started. Alright, one more quick note before I get started. I'm going to be doing 2 spoiler-free sections and 1 spoiler-filled section in the middle. If you don't want to be spoiled, or if you haven't been up to date with the Outlander series, you can definitely skip over that. And I'm going to leave markers in the description down below and on the screen letting you know when there's spoiler-free sections and when there is the spoiler-filled section. Alright, so when I'm thinking about my overall thoughts, I would say that A Breath of Snow and Ashes is one of my favorite books in the Outlander series. It definitely gives Drums of Autumn a run for its money. I love that we finally get the resolution for some of the plot points that have been kind of dragged through from Drums of Autumn into the Fiery Cross and now this book. And I loved all the character growth and development that happens in this one. It's very exciting to see, and I had just such a great time reading this. This story was action-packed, and I really think that it kept me engaged all the way throughout, which I can't say is the same for all of the Outlander books. So this is definitely one that if you are reading through the series, you should pay close attention to it because it's really action-packed and it's really exciting. I definitely highly recommend this book. I know it's in the middle of the series, but if you're reading through and you want to skip over the Fiery Cross, I would say look up a summary online, or you can watch my video on it, and then you can hop into this one because this is one that I think you should not miss if you're planning to read the Outlander books. Alright, so without further ado, I'm gonna hop into the spoiler-filled section. So this is your warning. The next thoughts will be spoiler-filled, and if you don't want to be spoiled, you can definitely skip ahead to my next spoiler-free section. I'm going to summarize everything at the end, give you more of my overall thoughts, and just let you know how I think it ranks in with the other books in the series so far. Alright, so we're gonna start the book in 1773. We're in March, and we actually start in young Ian's perspective. I believe this is the first time that we're getting his perspective, which is super exciting, and it's very exciting because he was also with the Mohawk for a lot of the Fiery Cross. He didn't rejoin the Frasers at the Ridge until the very end, so I love that we finally get a little bit more of insight into his perspective. Obviously, it's going to be limited towards the beginning of this book, but we will get a lot of information as to why Ian has left the Mohawk and why he has returned to the Ridge. He is also injured in the woods, and then this is how we start the story. Claire, Jamie, Bree, and Roger come across the remains of a family who died before their house was burned, and it's a little bit alarming, so Claire and Jamie return to the Ridge, and they find Major McDonald awaiting them, and we see young Ian returning, and he's been injured, as I mentioned. Bree and Roger have been super scared by this fire that they've seen, so they decide that they're going to go fetch Jem. He was staying with one of the families of the Ridge, and he was going to sleep over, but they want him close because there's a lot of fires and a lot of just chaos happening because of the War of the Regulation that had happened and the build-up to the Revolutionary War. We see that Major McDonald tells Jamie about other incidents like this, and he encourages Jamie to create a committee of safety, but Jamie just does not want to do this. At this point, he says that Jamie should also become an Indian agent for the crown, but Jamie's not really convinced to do either of those things yet at this point. Jamie also takes in many new tenants that have just arrived from Scotland, and at this point we know that eventually Jamie is going to have to cut ties with the crown, and it's very concerning seeing him walk such a fine line between the two sides. Like, we know he's walking a very thin line here, and soon he's going to have to break away, so I'm a little nervous for how that's gonna play out going forward. Moving on to April 1773, we meet Bobby Higgins, who comes with a package from Lord John Grey and shares his views on the Boston Massacre. Claire treats his ailments. He has, I think, hemorrhoids and some other issues, and she also treats Lizzie, who was Brianna's handmaiden that she meets in Drums of Autumn, and she's treating Lizzie because she has recurrent attacks of malaria, and then she also figures out why Bobby has been having fainting spells. So we see a lot of Claire doing some doctoring at the very beginning of the story, and I really feel for Lizzie because she has this recurring disease. She's never really gonna get over the malaria, and she doesn't really deserve that, even though she causes a lot of the chaos that happens in Drums of Autumn. We also see that Jamie has decided that he's gonna gather Roger, Archbug, and Tom Christie, and these are the people he's chosen to be basically his ambassador to bring over the Scottish immigrants to the Ridge. Alright, so moving on to July of 1773, Jamie had previously decided that he was gonna be an Indian agent after the Browns formed a committee of safety. He does this to kind of try to leverage with them and make sure that they don't have more power than he does. And in July, he meets with the people of the Snowbird. So these are some members of a Cherokee tribe, and he strongly rejects the advances of 2 Cherokee women. That's kind of their way of showing hospitality, and he's like, no, I'm happily married, I don't want this, but he has to find a way of doing that in a very culturally sensitive way so they don't take offense. I thought it was really funny trying to see him fight off these advances, and it just added a lot of humor to the story. We also see that Roger and Duncan are at River Run discussing religion, and Phaedra, who is Jocasta's slave maid, tells Roger about an Irishman who's very interested in Jem. So hint hint, we have Stephen Bonnet back in the picture. He has appeared again very early in the narrative this time, and we once again get that feeling of foreboding that comes with any mention of Bonnet. We know that something is going to happen in this book. We've been climaxing, and we just have to see how all the pieces fall. Moving on to August of 1773, Claire tells Jamie about the burning of a field of barley and the arrival of new tenants. He also tells Lord John Grey through a letter that he has become an Indian agent. Bree writes about a dream with running water, and Roger makes a toy car for Jem. We can see that they're still clinging to aspects of their life in the future, and I think it's interesting to see how they try to remember this and replicate some aspects of it in the 1770s. But of course, they have to be very careful about this, because if other people find out, they could be burned for being witches, or, you know, just hanged or something like that. So it has to be kept very quiet. They definitely have to be cautious with this, and Claire is definitely a little bit reckless with her medical modern advances. So we will see that this may have future implications going forward. Moving on to September of 1773, we have more news of burnings in the back country, and Claire gets a letter from Lord John Grey along with glass globes and oil of vitriol to help her create ether. So ether is basically like an anesthetic or some sort of substance that helps put her patients to sleep, and this will allow her to do some more modern surgeries going forward. So that's definitely very exciting and going to be very helpful for the people of the Ridge moving forward. We see that Jamie and Ian bring Cherokee guests to Claire as well, one of them who needs oral surgery. A native man brings bones from a white man as proof of his death and shows his death was not violent nor caused by any of the nearby tribes. They want to make sure that they're on friendly terms with the Frasers and make it clear that it's not them who have been burning down all the houses nearby. Bree also makes matches using white phosphorus that Lord John Grey sends her, and once again, I love to see that Brianna is being able to use that great engineering mind of hers. Like, she has such a brilliant mind, and I prefer this to the other books where Bree really didn't feel like she had a place yet, and she really didn't know how to contribute to the time period. So I like that she's more than just a wife and a mother in this one. Claire mends a wound on Tom Christie's hand, and she tries to get him to allow her to do surgery on it, but he's very reticent. He is hesitant to do it because he doesn't want her to mess with it, and he just is afraid of the surgery as well. Archbug ends up telling Claire and Jamie that he lost 2 fingers with the Frasers of Glenham. Hint, hint, this might be a clue that the bug should not be trusted, so keep that in mind. And Tom Christie tries to back out of hand surgery, but Claire persuades him that it's going to be the best option. He refuses the ether because he does not want to be put to sleep, and Claire does this hand surgery on him while he's fully awake, with him drinking whiskey and Jamie restraining him. And I think this is the beginning of the thawing of the relationship between Tom and Claire going forward. Again, Tom is very anti-medicine, anti-anything that seems kind of supernatural, like most of the Protestants that have settled at the Ridge. And I will say that we should keep an eye on this relationship between Tom and Claire going forward into the future, because it's going to have some repercussions later on in the book. Jamie and Roger end up traveling back to the Cherokee village, and they encounter a hanged couple, and also they find a dying little girl, and they see that their home was burnt. And this was really tragic to read about. The girl is like skin and bones basically when they find her, and it was a little gruesome, but you can definitely see the impact that the war and all these hostilities are having on the Ridge, on North Carolina, and on all of the colonies as a whole. Roger helps Bree dig a kiln, so that's basically for making like a toilet or something like that. I'm not too sure, but Bree is off using her engineering mind again. And Claire and Marsley are attacked at a whiskey malting shed. Claire is taken captive by the men that attacked them, and Lionel Brown, who's amongst the men, tries to kill her to prevent her telling Jamie about the kidnapping. And Claire is also taken by a man who she met at the gathering in the Fiery Cross. Another man in the party is named Wendigo Donner, and she finds out that he's a fellow time traveler from the year 1968. Claire gets tied to a tree on night 2 and has a man fondle her breasts, gets hit and kicked by another of the men, she's raped, and Donner asks her about her time travel experience, as if she didn't have enough else going on at this time. So 3 days after she's been kidnapped, Jamie and a group of his men have found her and they rescue her, and Jamie Jamie tells them to kill all of the men that were part of her kidnapping, except for Lionel Brown, who they decide they're going to take to interrogate him. The entire kidnapping sequence was absolutely horrific to read about. You really get to follow Claire's internal thoughts as all of this is happening and feel connected to her experiences, emotions, and the psychological numbness that fills her as a survival mechanism just to get through the situation. She is not well after this situation for a while. She's very numb and it's kind of hard to coax her out of this state, but it's going to take a little bit of time for her to recover from all of this trauma that happened to her in such a short period of time. Jamie interrogates Lionel Brown and he reveals that the Browns committee made an agreement with Hodgepile's men after they attacked Beardsley's trading post. And after several days, Lionel Brown goes from the Bug's pet cabin to the big house and asks Claire to tend his injuries, and he asks her for mercy as well. Mrs. Bug ends up finding him and she kills him with a pillow when Claire leaves the room, and Archbug decides he's going to offer his life to Jamie for his wife, but Jamie decides to spare their lives. Again, there's some foreshadowing going on here. Why did Mrs. Bug kill Lionel Brown? We don't quite know yet, but again, maybe the Bugs should not be trusted. That's another recurrent theme that's been going on, and Mr. Bug is fearing this retribution and he's offering his life, and maybe Jamie should have done something about that besides just granting him mercy, but again, he had no idea what would be to come, so there's definitely going to be more drama to ensue with the Bugs. Jamie and Claire, along with some of the Cherokee and some members of the Ridge, deliver Lionel Brown's body to his brother, and basically his brother's like going to be biding his time. He's like, I understand why you did this, but I'm going to get my revenge as well. So we also see that Fergus and Marsley, who are still at the Ridge at this point, have a son named Henri Christian, and he's born with dwarfism. This leads to a lot of talk around the Ridge about him being the devil's spawn, especially since Fergus has been struggling a lot in this book with alcoholism and really feeling like he lacks a purpose. It was really upsetting to read this section and honestly a little bit heartbreaking. This storyline for Fergus and Marsley in the book is really devastating, and Fergus has been really struggling with feelings of inadequacy, and you really feel for him. This creates a lot of tension in the marriage between Fergus and Marsley, and we just really want them to kind of figure things out, Fergus to work through his feelings and for things to improve because they are not doing well at this point in the book. So Fergus decides that he wants to have a conversation with Claire, and they talk about Henri Christian's future, and Ian shares the story of Isabel, his own stillborn child, and the fight that he has with a wolf the night that she is stillborn. He shares this with Marsley in order to kind of relate to her and make her feel better about the situation. In 1774, we move on to March. Jamie inquires after the McGillivrays about acquiring muskets, and in April, Claire tests her newest medical treatment, ether, which puts her patients to sleep, and she tries it out on both Lizzie and Bobby. Jamie ends up sending a letter and a gem to Lord John Grey with Bobby Higgins, and he also goes to visit the Cherokee to meet another Indian agent, Scott G. Cameron, and he recalls some of his forgotten memories from Culloden. So we can tell that even after all this time, Culloden still plagues him. It's something that's never going to leave him. It will always come to him in moments of battles and things like that to come forward, and it's because he has so much trauma associated with it. Moving on to June, Manfred McGillivray, who was engaged to Lizzie, tells Claire that he thinks he has syphilis and he can't marry Lizzie. He then flees, and Ute McGillivray, his mother, accuses Claire of slandering her family in the middle of the night, and she says the Frasers are no longer welcome to trade with her family. Claire sees Tom Christie punishing Malva with switches, and she asks Jamie to look into it, and they remember when Jamie hit her with a belt, and it's an evaluation of just how far they've come in their relationship. In July, Jamie and Bree see a pile of charred bones, and they learn that this is a love charm. Hint, we have some more foreshadowing happening here. What is happening with this love charm? Gotta keep an eye on it, so just remember that going forward. And Roger gets very close to Amy and Aidan McCallum. Because of this, there's rumors spreading about his relationship with Amy, and Roger decides that he needs to sever ties with her. Aidan develops appendicitis, and Claire uses her ether to perform an appendectomy, and Tom and Alan Christie are upset that Malva was involved with the use of ether. Roger decides that he wants to become a minister, and he tells Brianna, and it's exciting to see Roger kind of find a purpose. He's just been lacking a sense of belonging in the past, and it's especially nice to see that he has found a true vocation, one that fits his personality so well. In August of 1774, the Frasers attend a barbecue at River Run in honor of Flora MacDonald. Claire does perform an eye surgery on Jocasta to help her with her glaucoma symptoms, and Jocasta tells her that she spoke with an unknown man and he told her about the Frenchman's gold. So this is the same person who took part of it before the Battle of Culloden, and she has seen him one other time at the gathering. So this is definitely very odd and something to note. Very interesting, and again, it might come up again in the future. future, so keep that in mind. Bree sketches Ian and she meets Wendigo Donner after she hears him humming a modern musical tune. And Claire acquires a penis syringe and meets Jezebel Hatfield Morton, who is Isaiah Morton's first wife. He was a side character from the Fiery Cross who ran off with one of the brown women because he had impregnated her, and there was a whole lot of chaos related to that. And Claire and Jamie go to meet Mrs. Sylvie, who has a brothel, and they think that this is where Manfred had acquired syphilis, so they're trying to treat all the women there. In September, Roger returns from getting some training to be a Protestant minister, and he performs his first baptism. He delivers his first sermon as well, and a snake almost creates a disturbance, but Jamie saves the day. Lord John Grey proposes that Bobby marry Lizzie, and he writes of his concern that Jamie is associated with a committee of correspondence in North Carolina. Joseph Weems, who's Lizzie's father, refuses to let Bobby marry Lizzie because he has a past as a murderer. The McNeil family was found with a terrible illness, and this disease starts to spread throughout the ridge as Claire tries to treat all the people that get ill with it. She also ends up falling ill and she almost dies, and she figures out after she recovers that her illness was not the same as the one affecting the rest of the ridge. Again, keep this in mind because this is foreshadowing of something to come. And Fergus, while Claire is ill, tries to end his life. In October, Jamie brings guns to the Cherokee. Fergus, Marcy, and their children decide that they're going to leave the ridge and set up in Wilmington so Fergus can run a printing press. This way, Fergus will be a little bit happier, will feel like he has a purpose, and be able to provide for his family better in a way that he never really could on the ridge. In November, Claire receives an odd note from Phaedra, who again was Jocasta's maid, and she and Jamie go to visit her at River Run, but they find that she's been missing. They also find out that she is the daughter of Hector Cameron, who was Jocasta's late husband, and there's a whole complicated history along with that. Lizzie also reveals that she's pregnant, and the father of her baby is one of the Beardsley twins, but she doesn't know which. She tricks Jamie and Roger into handfasting her with each of the twins, and I think it was interesting to see how Diana took on a polyamorous relationship. This is something that was super unexpected for me, and it was an intriguing twist for sure. I like some of the drama that ensued from this relationship. It was kind of funny and definitely different. It kept the plot engaging, and Lizzie has always been one of my favorite side characters, so it was interesting to see her get a little bit more development on page. We also see that Jem gets lice, and he has to have all of his hair shaved off, and a hereditary birthmark is found on his head, which is the same one that Roger has on his. So we have it confirmed that Roger is in fact his father in this book. Moving on to March of 1775, Jamie decides he's going to sever communications with Lord John Grey after he gets another worried note from him. And in April, Bree and Roger recite Paul Revere's Ride together as Lizzie gives birth to a son on April 19th. Roger tells Bree that he's formed a Freemason lodge on the ridge. There will be more implications for this to come, not necessarily in this book, but in some future books for sure. Jamie and Claire get a letter from Marsley, and Jamie signs his name to the Lexington Alarm. He is beginning to ally himself more and more with the rebels, and this may cause some issues for him, but we'll see as we get along. We move on to May of 1775, and this is when all chaos breaks loose. Malva says that Jamie is the father of her child, and doubt and suspicion spreads throughout the ridge. Claire finds Malva murdered in her garden and tries to save her unborn child, but fails. And this entire plotline was just super out of pocket, really wild, really intense, and it felt like a soap opera. I kept my book so close to my nose. I was at the edge of my seat reading this. It was so much happening, but so exciting as well. In June of 1775, Roger, Bree, and Jem travel to River Run because Roger's trying to become ordained as a Protestant minister, and Richard Brown arrives at the ridge with a group of men demanding that Claire be tried for murder. Again, I told you that Richard Brown was biding his time, and he was looking for any excuse to exact revenge on the Frasers. And a house siege ensues, and a mob of residents gather, with Tom Christie deciding to travel with the Frasers to ensure that they get a fair trial. This entire plotline is action-packed, absolutely bonkers, yet entirely plausible. Claire has always drawn a lot of suspicion because of her medical capabilities, and in a small settlement like Fraser's Ridge, this was going to bubble over with all the tensions that were surrounding the Revolutionary War and all of that happening as well. In July, a crowd throws stones at Claire and her traveling group, so they're heading to find a magistrate, and Ian agrees that he's going to hunt down Richard Brown if he breaks away from the group. Brown and his men take Claire to New Bern, and they leave her with the local sheriff while Jamie is restrained, and Ian comes to release him. Claire is released from jail a few days later because the governor's wife needs a midwife, and at Tryon Palace, she ends up caring for the very heavily pregnant Mrs. Tryon and acts as secretary to the governor. Claire gets a letter to Fergus and Marsley, and Jamie gets it when he arrives with Ian, and it's kind of insane just how much Claire is kidnapped during this book. book, she faces so many challenges, and I was kept at the edge of my seat the entire time I was reading this. Claire comes under fire a lot in this one, and we just see the dedication of the relationship between Claire and Jamie and how much he wants to save her in all these situations. We also see that Claire gets a letter to Fergus and Marsley, and Jamie receives it when he arrives with Ian there, and Mrs. Martin is taken away under darkness, so Claire has to end up posing as the governor's wife while he tries to escape because tensions have been building and they basically are going to hang this man. And Jamie sees this and he follows behind, but he ends up losing them, and Claire and the governor board a ship called the Cruiser. Jamie arrives the next morning after receiving some information about Claire's whereabouts, and he tries but fails to get Claire released. Tom Christie then follows and he confesses to Malva's murder, and Jamie comes to collect Claire. We see that Tom also confesses his love for Claire, and this is a bit of a redemption arc for Tom Christie after all of the chaos and drama that happened earlier in the book, and it feels a little bit unfair that he had to admit to the murder, but it was really the only way to save Claire, and it shows the true depths of his dedication to her. So then we move on to August of 1775, and Bree is kidnapped from River Run by someone that is affiliated with Stephen Bonnet. She is then taken to him, and Jamie goes to find Roger, who's about to be ordained, and tells him that Bree has been captured. We're finally gonna deal with the Stephen Bonnet storyline. It's been 2 books, way too many pages, and I'm glad that this is going to be over very soon. We see that the chapter is gonna close here, and it's long overdue, but I'm glad to see it happen. Brianna is held prisoner on a ship called the Anemone, and she convinces Bonnet not to rape her because she is pregnant. She pleads with a whore named Hepzibah to get a note to her family letting her know that they're heading to Ocracoke. Roger and Ian interrogate Neil Forbes, who was affiliated with Stephen Bonnet, and Jamie takes his mother captive, and Roger and the Frasers meet Manfred McGillivray and the whore Hepzibah. They find out about Ocracoke, head there, and also Roger finds another stone circle on their way, and a slave ship arrives, which kind of detains them a little bit. Bonnet tries to sell Brianna off, and Brianna discovers that Phaedra works in Bonnet's kitchen. Roger, Ian, and Jamie arrive on the scene, find Bree, who has escaped from the house where she's being held, and let Bree decide what to do with Bonnet. So that's kind of almost the end of the chapter with Bonnet. We don't really see too much more of him in this book, but we will get a final closing couple of chapters. In September of 1775, L'Onion, or The Onion, Fergus's newspaper, publishes a notice about the capture of Stephen Bonnet and his sentence to die by drowning. I really felt a sense of satisfaction and relief at the fact that Bonnet had finally got what was coming to him. He's finally facing the music, getting the consequences that he deserves, and I'm glad that this storyline is coming to a close because it was too dragged out. In October of 1775, Jocasta, Duncan, and Ulysses visit the Ridge as they are going to emigrate to Nova Scotia. Jocasta admits that she had been having an affair with Ulysses for years, and he actually leaves in the night to join Lord Dunsmore's army in Virginia. He's allying himself with the Loyalists, of course, and we find that Diana is kind of wrapping up the storyline because she doesn't really have a use for Jocasta and Duncan anymore. They've become a little bit irrelevant to the story, and she likes to phase characters out of the story periodically as they become kind of more obsolete. I'm glad that this is how Jocasta and Duncan's story is ending because Jamie doesn't end up having to wrestle between his loyalty to his family and his loyalty to the rebel cause going forward. So we move on to January of 1776. The Frasers and the Mackenzies wait to see if the big house will burn down, as was predicted by the newspaper clipping they found in the late 1960s. And there is no fire, but Major MacDonald comes and he tries to recruit Jamie to march against the rebels. This is basically like Jamie's last chance to ally with the Loyalists. In February of 1776, Jamie summons the men of the Ridge to form a rebel militia that will march to Wilmington. He and his men crush the British forces, mainly composed of Scottish soldiers, and during the battle, Jamie remembers his godfather Murtagh and kills Major MacDonald. In April of 1776, Amanda Claire Hope Mackenzie is born, and it's so exciting to have another young Mackenzie on the scene. Her birth is so heartwarming, with Roger and the Frasers all being present. It's the first time that a new child is born that everyone is involved at the birth, and I love that. I love just the bonding moment for the family here and all the development that happens. In July of 1776, Claire discovers that Mandy has a heart defect. This cannot be safely repaired in the 18th century and would obviously cause her death if they stayed in the past, so they decide that they're going to try to go back to the future. In July of 1776, the Frasers and Mackenzies go to Wilmington to look for gemstones so they can travel through the stones at Ocracoke. Bree learns that she has a half-brother named William Ransom and that he's also Lord John Grey's stepson. Bree shoots Stephen Bonnet, who has been sentenced to death by drowning, and it's kind of like a victory for her. She gets to see it out. He doesn't have to suffer because he always mentioned that drowning was his most feared way of dying, but but she does get to see that his life is ended and there's never going to be any doubt again about him haunting her life. Jamie also asked Lord John Grey to help him find a gemstone, and Lord John gives him his ring, which has a sapphire in it. In September of 1776, Bree and Roger end up saying goodbye to the Ridge and to all the people that they love there. Jamie gives Claire a gemstone as well, but she refuses it and throws it out of the window, refusing the possibility of ever returning to the future. In October of 1776, the Mackenzies leave through the stones at Ocracoke, so they're going to head into 1980, and we'll see what happens with that in the next book. In November of 1776, Jamie has a dream about the Mackenzies in the future, and I think it's really interesting that he dreams about the future. There is a moment in the first book where he's like a ghost visiting Claire before she ever meets him, so I'm curious to learn more about this power of his and see how it impacts the story going forward. As of the 9th book, we don't really know too much more about this, but I'm hoping that the last book in the series will provide some more clues or hints as to what his abilities are and why he's able to do this. Claire ends up seeing Alan Christie at Malva's grave, and he admits to incest, to sexually abusing Malva from childhood, impregnating her, and killing her when she wanted to tell the truth about the whole situation. Young Ian is overhearing this whole conversation, and he kills Alan after he confesses this. In December of 1776, Claire finds Wendigo Donner and several others trying to steal gemstones from the big house. He threatens to tear the house apart because he hasn't been able to find any gemstones, and Donner's men end up finding gold in Mrs. Bug's basket, and it's discovered that Archbug was the last masked man who retrieved the Culloden gold, and he stole the gold from Jocasta Cameron's house as well. The ether in Claire's surgery is broken, and Ian lights a match, and this causes the house to burn down. So the prediction of the house burning down was accurate, but the date was wrong, as so often happens in historical records. Claire and Jamie decide that they're going to return to Scotland to fetch the printing press that he has left over there so he can write and publish newspapers in support of the rebels, and that's kind of where we leave the story off at this point. Alright, so those are all of my spoiler-filled thoughts on A Breath of Snow and Ashes. Now I'm gonna hop into just some of my last overall feelings and just my overall ranking for this book in the series. Again, it's one that I absolutely love, and I'm so glad to have read it, and it will be one that I will be rereading at some point. So overall, I think A Breath of Snow and Ashes really shows off Diana's writing craft and her skill in this one. The character development is amazing. I love seeing all the characters together again, with young Ian returning to his family, and there's so much of his trauma that just hasn't been revealed yet, but we will get in future books as well. And we have the Revolutionary War kind of building in this one, but it's not at the forefront. There is a couple of battles in it, but again, just not the main focus. It's a lot about the drama on the ridge and with the family, and I found all of that to be very exciting. There was not one page of this book that I wanted to skip past. I really enjoyed all of it, and it's rare for me to say that for one of the Outlander books, but even the medical stuff in here had a lot of purpose and added to the story, and I just love seeing new people arriving in the ridge and the drama that happens with those people. The Christies are really interesting characters and ones that I could just continue to analyze and analyze again because they have such an impact on the story, and I just don't know how to feel about them, and that's a sign of a really good character because they're so complex. Malva and her stuff is very complicated. Tom wants to be a good man, but he's a little bit misguided, and then Alan also has his issues. They add a lot to the story. Overall, I think this is one that you definitely should read if you plan on reading the Outlander series. If you've watched this season of the show, I will say it's a little truncated in the show and it doesn't really deliver everything that the book does, so I would recommend checking out the book if you're interested or you enjoyed the plotline from season 6 of the show. And yeah, I really like this one so much. When ranking it in comparison to the other 5 books that I've read and reviewed so far, I would say that this book edges out Drums of Autumn. So this is probably my favorite of the first 6, and of the first 9 that have been published, I'm really stuck between this one and Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone, but that could be because of recency bias. Only time will tell which one is my top true favorite, but this is definitely really far up there. I think Drums of Autumn is really good, but the characters are going through so much strife and they're apart a lot of the book, and we really see their bonds and their connection in this, and I think that's at the heart of the Outlander story, and that's part of what makes the series so good. And we have so many great moments in this of the family really coming together in spite of all the trauma that they face. So I would recommend this. I love this book to pieces. This was one of my 5-star reads of 2024, and if you have not yet checked it out, I definitely think you should. Alright, so that's gonna be it for me. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. Have you read the Outlander books to this point? Have you watched all of the TV show? I'd love to know any of your thoughts if you have, and just any other thoughts that you have as well. Are you interested in reading this book? I'd love to hear about that as well. So that's gonna be it for me. I just want to say a big thank you you to everyone that watches my videos. I appreciate each and every one of you. And wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you are doing well, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!